Good afternoon, everybody. Pigskin Pete here. Happy Monday to everybody. Did you miss me? I'm sure you didn't, but I did miss you, though. That's more important. So it feels like it's been like a month since I've been on YouTube, but it's only been like a week and a half. But when you put out videos almost every day and then you take a 10-day or 11-day break from it, it seems like a long time. Anyway, I was on family vacation, and I pretty much checked out from YouTube and Twitter and whatever else. I didn't look at it a whole lot. I went on once or twice a day and just kind of perused through for a couple of minutes. But anyway, I missed a lot of different stuff that happened. A lot of spring games, some other news in the NFL and college football. Nothing real groundbreaking, though. I'm not going to go backwards and cover stuff that happened a week ago because, quite frankly, nobody cares about what happened a week ago. But we're in the moment type of society now. So let's look forward. And what we have to look forward to is one of my favorite nights of the year that starts this Thursday night, and that is the NFL Draft. So I will be going live for at least the first round of the NFL Draft, and I'll go on, say, 20 to 30 minutes prior to the draft starting, and I'll try to stay on live throughout the entire first round at least. Now, I did a mock draft. When was that? A couple of months ago. It was before the free agency even started. Before all these big trades happened and all the different moves that happened. And most of the people that watched that considered that mock draft to be terrible. Anyways, I'm not going to do another mock draft between now and Thursday. Forget about it. What I will do, though, is probably just write down the top, what I consider to be the top 32 players in the draft, and we'll see where they fall in the first round, or if some of them don't make it in the first round. We'll do it like that. But anyway, I love the draft. I love it. And so I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope you all can join me Thursday night for that. Now, what I want to talk about today, so the last video that I did make before I went on vacation was the video about LSU fans getting all hyped up about this next season and all that. And I was poking fun at, what's his name? TJ LSU. And listen, I got a mixed response. I was actually very happy with the response I got from that. Of course, I had the response that I already knew I was going to get, that I even mentioned in the video that I would get from a lot of people, and that was, well, Clemson's got a cupcake schedule every year. You're picking on LSU. First of all, I wasn't picking on LSU. You'll know if I'm picking on you. I was actually being pretty nice in there. As far as TJ LSU dad goes, I got a few people on there saying, listen, man, TJ is a good guy and this and that. I don't have a problem with TJ LSU. I don't know him. I certainly don't have a problem with him. I was just messing with him because of all the stuff that he was saying about Clemson with the whole PED thing. And then anyway, I don't hate anybody, and I certainly don't hate somebody that I don't even know. I'm sure TJ's a great guy. Okay. It was a cheap shot I was taking at him, and it was fun. But anyway, the other stuff I was saying about the LSU fans, it's just a reaction to what I read on Twitter and see on YouTube and stuff, okay? But anyway, so I had a certain sector of fans came on there telling me, well, Clemson's got an easy schedule, blah, blah, blah. That's the rebuttal that you hear from every team who's just on the outside looking in, because Clemson's, at the top right now. And so or Clemson just got good, which is another fallacy. It's just not true. They've been good for almost a decade now, and of course they've been at the top of the college football world for 5 or 6 years. I mean, I don't know how long you got to do it before people can stop saying you just got good, but whatever. And then there was a whole nother group of LSU fans that pleasantly surprised me and basically came on and said that they agreed with pretty much everything I was saying. And I don't think I said anything that was quite frankly that outlandish about LSU. And listen, this is from an outsider fan's perspective. Obviously, if you're going to listen to an LSU fan, they're going to make it sound a lot better than what it really is. If you listen to a Clemson fan, they're probably going to make it sound a lot better than it really is. But as an outsider looking in, I gave you my honest opinion on how I see LSU over the past, say, 5 or 6 years, where they are now, and where they're possibly going. And I did admit that I was completely wrong about Ed Orgeron last year. Because before last year started, I made several videos. Listen, I thought that Ed Orgeron would not last through last year. I didn't even think he'd make it to the end of the year before he got fired. And they had a really good season last year, and they're recruiting well, and I think they're going to be really good next year. So when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And that was one of the very first things that I mentioned whenever I did my end of the season, where I was right, where I was wrong video, is that I was completely wrong about LSU and Ed Orgeron. Now, can they continue that? I think they can. So I have turned the corner with how I feel about Ed O and LSU's program as a whole, as they stand right now. But, so, let's look at LSU's schedule, if I can pull it up here. And we'll try to figure out, at least from Pigskin Pete's point of view, where they'll possibly end up next year and what their expectations should be. And we'll see if the LSU fans agree with me or not. I'm assuming some will, some won't, but whatever. It is what it is. All right, so week 1, we got, let's see, week 1, 8/31/19. Okay, it looks like Georgia Southern, so that's a win. Week 2, this is a good, tough non-conference matchup, and I applaud, by the way, LSU for scheduling this team because they have such a difficult division that they play. And I consider the SEC West to be the toughest division in football in recent years. And I don't think that's going to change just next year. But anyway, so they play Texas week 2. That's going to be a good game. That's the same week that Clemson plays A&M. And so we'll see where game day goes. But I would say that Texas and LSU are definitely on the list for game day. We'll see what happens there. Now, as far as the outcome of that, I would give the edge to LSU. Now, the way this reads, it looks like it's in Texas, unless it's a neutral site game that I'm missing. But Texas is listed as the home team. You guys can let me know how that works. But I still think LSU should be favored in that game, and I still think LSU will probably win that game. But Texas is one of these teams like LSU that's ascending right now and getting better. And so I think that'll be a great game. Then they have Northwestern State, so that's a win. Then they have Vanderbilt. I'm going to assume that's a win, even though it's in Vandy. Then they have Utah State, which is obviously a win. This is where the schedule turns to the meat of the schedule. Their schedule is obviously backloaded, and once they get into divisional play and mostly SEC play. Florida, this game is in Baton Rouge, which I believe gives the edge to LSU. Plus, I do believe that LSU is slightly better as a football program right now than Florida is, and I don't think there's a huge separation there or anything. But being that it's in Baton Rouge, being that they lost to Florida last year, and being that I just think LSU is overall a slightly better team right now, I'm going to say LSU wins that game. Then they have Mississippi State. That game is in Mississippi State. And Mississippi State is one of these teams that you can get caught slipping and lose against. And if you look at the games that come after Mississippi State for LSU, this could be a trap game for them. I consider Mississippi State to be equal to some teams in the ACC that lose 4 or 5 games a year, but they're capable of knocking off anybody on any given day. But anyway, that's not a knock on Mississippi State. It just is what it is. There's a huge difference in talent level for the players at Mississippi State and LSU. So that would be what I would consider to be not a good loss if LSU lost that game. But anyway, I believe LSU will win the game. Then they have Auburn. That game's in Baton Rouge. So if you're noticing a pattern so far here, is that most of LSU's big games, big SEC games especially, are in Baton Rouge. I do believe they'll beat Auburn. That game's in Baton Rouge. But Auburn is so hard to figure out. I mean, talk about a roller coaster ride. The Gus bus is you may as well put it on roller coaster tracks because it goes up and down year by year. Last year, I thought Auburn was going to be a top 5 team, and they just didn't live up to it. So I don't know what to expect from Auburn. I'm going to assume that LSU is going to be a better team than Auburn next year, but who knows? Then they have their toughest game of the year, and it's on the road, and that's against Alabama. They've lost many years in a row to Alabama, and I don't see that changing this year. Of course, anything can happen. Injuries, whatever, whatever. But I'm going to assume that's the first loss, and I'm going to give to LSU on their schedule. Okay. Then they have Ole Miss. Again, this is similar to Mississippi State. I believe that Ole Miss is still recovering from this whole Hugh Freeze scandal thing that happened, or at least 2 or 3 years away from Mississippi being able to be a viable contender in that division or in that conference like they were when Hugh Freeze was there. And so I'll give that to LSU as well. Then they have Arkansas. Obviously, I'm going to consider that a win for LSU. And then they end the season off against their rival team, whatever. They don't have an in-state rival, so they play A&M during rivalry weekend every year. Last year, A&M won that game in like 7 overtimes or something, so it wasn't like it was a blowout. But that was the first time that A&M has beaten LSU since A&M joined the SEC. But that game is in Baton Rouge this year. And listen, that's a 50-50 game to me because I'm a big believer in A&M as a whole. I believe that A&M is one of these teams that is going to be at the top of the SEC and a top 5 program within the next couple of years. Will that happen this year? I don't know. But I can tell you one thing. There's nobody that's looking forward to playing A&M on any given day, period. Even Clemson, week 2. That's a tough team. Tough team to play. So I think all things considered, with their schedule, with the way that their team looks, so I did go back and watch the majority, at least most of the highlights of the LSU spring game online. And I got to say, I'm very impressed with LSU's defense, which is no shocker there. They always have a really good defense. I can't remember a time when LSU had a bad defense in the past 20 years, really. Their Achilles heel has always been, at least in the past decade or so, since their last national title that they won with what's-his-face, Les Miles, has been quarterback play, mainly quarterback play. I mean, really, if you look at it, because I guess you can make an argument for a couple of years with a questionable offensive line, but their running game is always good. Last year was probably the worst running game they've had in a decade. They obviously lost Fournette a few years ago, and then they lost Geis. And they had some really good running backs last year, but not like the dominant running team that like they normally are. That could change this year, which would help out Joe Burrow big time. And they've always had a really good group of receivers too, but they need the quarterback to get him the football. Now, I consider Joe Burrow to be, and this is what pisses people off at LSU when I say this, and I don't think I'm being irrational when I say this. And by the way, it's just my opinion anyway, so who cares? I think Joe Burrow is a lot like Jake Fromm. He's a game manager. I don't consider him to be a game changer the same way that Kyler Murray or Cam Newton or Deshaun Watson, players like that, or even if you go back to LSU times, Jamarcus Russell, those days, I don't consider him to be a game changer. But if he has a solid defense, which he always does, and he has a dominant run game, then he doesn't have to be the guy that wins you the game. So worst case scenario, I think, for LSU is they should win. Looking at their schedule, they shouldn't lose more than 2 games in the regular season. If they get through Texas and they beat Auburn, then they're on their way to possibly only losing 1 game. Obviously, that would most likely be Alabama or Texas A&M, in my opinion. So I think that's pretty good. Now, if they let's say they only lose 1 game in the regular season and then they go out there and win their bowl game, you're talking about a 12-1 season, which is phenomenal. In that, listen, 1 loss could possibly even get them into the SEC title game, but that would have them beating Alabama most likely, which I don't see that happening this year, but anything can happen. Worst case scenario, I think 10-2, and then a win in the bowl game, so 11-2. Listen, I don't know how LSU fans feel about 11-2 season. If somebody came up, if you're an LSU fan and you're watching right now, and someone said next year you're only going to lose 2 games, you're going to lose to Alabama and either Texas A&M and Auburn, and you're going to win your bowl game, and you finish the year 11-2. I don't know. I think that you should be happy about that, even though I understand the fan perspective is you don't want to just go win 10 and 11 games every year. You want to compete for your division and your conference and get to the playoffs. I totally get that, but you've got to look at it for the long haul. And I think that an 11-win season with a bowl win would be something that LSU fans should be happy about. If they exceed that, then you should be super stoked about it. Now, if they only win 9 games like they did last year, or only win 8 and flop a couple of games they shouldn't lose, that's a red flag. It's one thing for a new coach like Ed Orgeron to go out there and do what he did last year and exceed expectations, but you have to maintain that for people to really give you the national respect, regardless of how difficult your schedule is, which I realize that LSU is in the top 5% of difficult schedules in the country just because of the division they play in. Okay. So anyway, that's it. Give me your feedback if you're an LSU fan on that. And I will do probably, I'm going to take what I consider to be the top 10 teams in the country before the season starts and go through a rundown of how I think they'll do. I'm not going to do, obviously, every SEC team or every ACC team or every Big Ten team. I'm just going to do maybe a top 10 and sort of do a season prediction for them as we get closer to the season. And we'll see what happens between now and then with my prediction. But as of right now, I'm predicting 11 wins total with a bowl game for LSU. That's it, folks. I'll see you on Thursday. I may see you before that, but I'll definitely see you on Thursday for the draft. Be there or be square. Thank you. Pigskin Pete checking out.